All right, so it's been many years since I was reading the manga Hinamatsuri, but now that it's been a few years, I was able to borrow about 9 volumes from the library, 2 of which I've already read before, but it's nice to get a refresher. So volume 9 of Hinamatsuri basically introduces a character, one of the bar patrons of Hitomi. Hitomi is the middle school. The joke is that she can't say no to people, so she ends up working multiple adult jobs even though she's in middle school. A lot of people maybe don't like the Hitomi storyline, but I have a friend that I worked with at an old job like 3 jobs ago, and she still looks the same. She looks like she's perpetually a young adult, so it's not a far stretch to believe that someone would do that. Anyways, this bar patron wants to impress Hitomi and mentions that he's out for revenge or something. So Hitomi talks to her Yakuza connection through Nita, and it ends up being a sort of mistaken identity sort of story, which is funny. But volume 9 essentially covers the last episode of the anime. So we get the school trip story in which Hina and 3 of her friends end up getting lost on a field trip on a mountain, and she ends up revealing her powers to them. So that's Hitomi and the 2 males. And then we get the storyline where Anzu basically stays over with Nita, and he realizes how much she's changed as a person because she was like that homeless thief, and now she's like the dutiful sort of daughter he's always wanted. And then we get one more storyline after that, like a small one about something I don't remember. I returned that volume early, but then we move on to volume 10. So 10 is important because there's a time skip of several years. I think it's about 3. So now Hina's in high school, and she doesn't want to go to high school because the food sucks. So she starts cooking food in class, and she has a reputation for being the Yakuza's daughter. And so Nita has a reputation for being, the fierce super fighter, even though it's really her powers that have given him that sort of reputation. She ends up being really chill and hanging out with all the different types. There's the troublemakers that think she's cool because of her dad. There's the nerdy types that want to talk to her about video games because she likes video games. And then so she's a bit of a social butterfly in volume 10. It's an interesting, funny dynamic. And the next story is, let's see, an awkward story in which Hitomi she abandons all of her side jobs, like the one at the bar and all the others, and she ends up trying to go for her own company. So she ends up it's pretty funny. She's going to skip university or college and just start her own company, but her father's unemployed, and she ends up hiring him, and he doesn't realize that it's her, and she has to like race him home every time, and it's pretty interesting. I don't think they're going to go further with that storyline. It's just mostly to introduce the fact that she has her own company. So that's that storyline. And then there's one more at the end where Hina has to get a job at a cafe, and it's pretty amusing. It's funny, small, just her getting a job for the first time. So volume 10 is important because of the time skip. There's something I forgot to mention in volume 9. They introduce Mao. She is another character who is one of a trio, and she's looking for Anzu and Hina, and she spent 3 long years looking for her. Her storyline is sort of teased in the last episode of the anime, but that's why I wanted to keep reading so I could find out more about her and more misadventures of the characters. But she ends up becoming a sort of not a major character, but she's like someone who sort of hangs around. So volume 11 is one of the funniest, to be honest. This one has a jerky sort of rival of Nita's who's jealous of him becoming lieutenant so fast, and he doesn't believe Nita has changed over the years, right? There's been a 3-year gap. Nita went from being, sort of kind of not lazy, but it's sort of a lackadaisical sort of Yakuza to like fierce super fighter because of the 2 incidents, one of which I don't think even is in the anime. But the first incident is the one where the pilot episode where Hina basically fights an entire branch of Yakuza for Nita, making him look like a super fighter. And then the other storyline is the one where Hina is kidnapped because they're trying to get to Nita, and then I forget the storyline, but something about a bomb being delivered, and then he's there, so they think like he's some sort of weird psycho that likes to like rain destruction on his enemies, and it ends up being pushed to like hilariously high levels, which makes it more funny. So this one has a bunch of his rivals trying to take him out. And oh yeah, there's like a small story about the lady who runs the bar. I don't really care about that one, but the Yakuza story is really funny because they basically try to hurt him a couple times with just like a bottle or a pot, and then they try to like just straight up kill him, but he's protected by the Holy Three. You know, he's got the Holy Trinity of Hina when she's tagging along with him, when he's eating lunch at Anzu's, and then Mao also decides to help him out. So whenever they try to like take him out, you know, they think he's got some sort of weird little girl bodyguard squad or something, and they have psychic powers, but they, you know, they don't see that, so they don't know that. So it ends up being extra funny because it looks like they're like disarming like grown Yakuza men, and it's a really funny, excellent story. And then let's see, the last one is, oh yeah, they introduced a teacher. She is not paying attention, but you know, she's basically, from her perspective, she thinks all kids are dumb. And they are, but they introduced this weird guy named Killer Mask because he wears a mask with the word killer on it, and he likes to like yell a lot, and the teacher won't call him Rooster like he wants to be called. She calls him Killer Mask, and there's a bit of a scuffle with him and Hina, which results in their suspension. It's a funny story. It's something that would definitely be translated well in an anime, but they're not going to do season 2 of Hinamatsuri. It's been like 2018, so it's been like 5 years, so you're gonna have to finish it off in the manga form. And then the last story is something about control collars having to be taken off, so the girls have to starve themselves in order to weaken the collars so that they can be free, because their handler is now sort of adapted to human life, and it's another funny story. So that's volume 11. Hinamatsuri Volume 12 is the reintroduction of Nita's sister Miko. A couple of Hina's classmates foolishly join her karate class. She's a coach at a dojo. However, in trying to get close to Nita, they end up enduring the wrath of his sister because she's, you know, the brash, drinking, tough-talking tomboy and starts abusing her students. So they come to Nita for help, for him to sort of set his sister straight. However, he's no match for his sister, so he's going to have to use Hina's abilities and to introduce a new aspect of the manga called psychic puppetry, in which Hina will use her powers to move someone's body for them, and they have a hilarious fight scene. And then we move on to a story with Hitoshi. He's a young boy who has a crush on Hina, ends up being he's like I think he's the estranged son of one of the lieutenants, one of Nita's co-workers, well, not co-worker, but Yakuza brother, and the two of them hang out more, and the retired Yakuza leader ends up getting too involved. He kind of feels like Hina's a sort of granddaughter he never had, so he dotes on her and he starts getting too involved, and then the other guy starts trying to push his son into it as well. It's a weird sort of story, but it's funny, you know. And we move on to a story with Anzu. She's got her little card set up, and it's not much going on. She's reconnection with old friends, you know, connections. However, the final chapter sort of pushes things into more serious nature. Yakuza turf wars. Several branches of Yakuza are being attacked by mysterious gunmen until the police show up. However, Nita's got pneumonia and he's supposed to be resting in the hospital. However, he asks Hina to sort of puppet him again and ends up taking on a branch of villains when they're cornered and setting up a new villain, a mysterious young boy and his Yakuza sort of guardian. So that's volume 12. Alright, it's the further adventures of Hina and Nita in Hinamatsuri Volume 13. This one's more so about these two, Haru and his Yakuza sort of handler, I guess you'd call it. Basically, we start with a story about Hitomi. She's basically trying to help her father patch things up because he was living abroad. It's an okay, heartwarming story that's pretty funny. It's basically like a, what you call it, a bottle episode, but it's about one character. So just her developing her, you know, she's one of the fan favorites, the hilarious girl who can't say no. And then we move on to Haru, basically okay, so basically in Hinamatsuri, the children are in eggs sometimes, or they're not. But anyways, this child appears in front of a Yakuza, and he can't call the cops, but the kid will do chores for him. So he starts hanging out with this kid. And it's funny because the way that Hina and Nita are together, it's almost like a surrogate father-daughter relationship, right? It's, you know, even his own family thinks that Hina is his illegitimate daughter, even though that she's basically adopted. But all of this Yakuza guy's buddies think he's a child molester. That's literally the entire plot of that villain. And it's just really funny because it's the polar opposite of what you think. And it's true. If you go to work and all of a sudden one of your coworkers just hanging around a 10-year-old for no reason, and you're like, is this like your nephew or your son or something? And he's just like, no, I refuse to elaborate. It'd be weird, right? It'd be weird. Why are you hanging around a 10-year-old kid all the time? And then there's a story about Hina just hanging out and buying video games is kind of boring. Just she's comfortable just sort of stagnating and just going to school, sleeping, playing video games, doing her thing. She's the main character, but she's just lacking, any drive or ambition. That's part of who she is as a person. And then they introduce, let's see, there's a ramen festival in which Anzu wants to enter and become more famous, but it's not really anything emotional. It's just like a story of people hanging out and the support system that Anzu has with these people. So moving on to volume 14, this one starts with a Mao story, which is really good too. Mao basically is very lonely, so she reaches out to Hitomi and they start to text, and what's her name? Mao becomes really clingy, and then it can't always be on the phone, so Mao takes her advice a little bit too well, and on TV ends up having to fight a martial arts master. Then we're moving on to a story. Oh yeah, this is a story about them trying to cheat at school. Hina and her friends are trying to cheat. It's not that funny, but whatever, it's okay. Then we're back to Haru and his handler. Essentially, Haru wants to get stronger, so he starts experimenting with his handler, getting into some fights with some hoodlums and stuff. It's an okay story. It's more character development. It's definitely a twisted combination, these two, but it's still pretty funny. There's some good laughs from this one. And then we're moving on to the final chapter, which is more... it's another Anzu story where Sabu's trying to get her to change her recipe because he doesn't want to eat there 3 times a week because his boss does. And then leading to a fallout. And then one more story with Hitomi being overworked and people trying to get her to take it easy, and then she just doesn't. So that's the end of volume 14. Hinamatsuri 15 and 16 are the next 2 volumes. I won't get into the plot too much because, I'm getting further into the series, but 15 has the beach day, and then Haru basically shows himself and gives us a lot of a bigger premonition of the future and why the girls have gone back in time. This is kind of like the main storyline, because Hinamatsuri coming, back with the other girls, there's a specific reason why they came back in time. And then we get some really good Hitomi story, basically her doing something that has to do with the future, and then cutting over to a scam artist trying to get with Nita, but it doesn't work because he's just like a guy who's into vases. That was a funny story, it's very simple. And then the last storyline is basically looking for alien story that I've seen before, like in something like Mob Psycho. Volume 16 is, let's see, another Mao story, a really good one actually, one that really pushes her and the rocker guy character together really well. I like that one. Then, let's see. Oh yeah, so there's a couple of low-level Yakuza who want to become Nita's lieutenant because him and Sabu are having a bit of a tiff. That one was a pretty silly story, pretty funny. And then, let's see, moving out to more Hitomi stuff, basically connecting with her new storyline. Not that interesting. And then the last one is the return of Nita's sister dealing with her students. Another funny storyline. Pretty simple stuff, but I like the Mao stuff the most in volume 16. So, yeah. And so we've reached the end of Hinamatsuri. Volume 19 is the 19th final volume. I didn't know that while I was reading. I got to 17 and 18, and then 19 says it's the final one. And in a way, I've sort of sensed it, because I noticed that Hina was barely in the series for the second half. Volumes like around 15 to 17 and 18, she's barely in it. You know, she's there's a time skip, so she's in high school now, so but she just plays video games and goes to high school and sleeps, does the same thing, not much going on with her story-wise. Occasionally she'll have like a story where she needs to use her powers to help Anita with the Yakuza or whatever, but we're mostly focusing on Hitomi because she affects the future, and there's a lot of Anzu stories and Mao stories and little side characters here and there. They didn't do the thing where they, leading up to the finale, they try to like close out everyone's story arcs. They sort of saved that for the last volume, but it's sad to see the series end. It's a lot of fun. Volume 17 sort of pushes more towards the future plot line, the main storyline of saving the future. Same with volume 18. 19 looks thicker than normal. However, it's just only up to about here is the story. The rest of it's just supplementary material, notes on all the different characters, some sketches, and then there's some fan art and just sort of like collections of outtakes, like crossover comics, and just, you know, what if Hina was a turtle or something, you know, or stuff like that. It's a really interesting series. Definitely check it out. I noticed the artwork is different. The author got better at the art as he went on. The first couple volumes look a little janky, but he's definitely mastered his craft with this comedy slice of life story. You can tell by volume 19's cover has all the different characters they've introduced over the years, and then the back also has the other half of the characters. So they don't do much with newcomer Haru and his minder and some of the other students, but we get a full roundabout arc for everyone pretty much. It's, you know, this is also a coming-of-age story, so it sort of ends with the next chapter going forward. I really enjoyed the series, definitely worth checking out. Those are my thoughts on the complete manga series of 1 to 19, I guess 10 to 19 of Hinamatsuri.